I'm so excited to be here in the Old Market House Art Centre here in Dungarvan with the renowned artist Ben Hennessy. Ben, we go back a long way.
We do.
Ben, I am such a fan of yours, and it's a great privilege to be here at your art exhibition and looking at your beautiful paintings. Tell us, what's your inspiration, and will you tell us a little story about some of your paintings?
I'd be happy to, and delighted you're here, Regina.
Thank you, Ben.
Well, a lot of the work here has mythological themes, and so and I've been painting about myths. I think I did my first Icarus painting in 1986 in San Francisco, and I'm not really sure what drew me to that, but like it's a theme that has been used by artists down through the centuries, most famously by Bruegel with the Fall of Icarus, which is a fantastic landscape and this tiny little boy making a splash and life goes on. But generally in those kind of paintings, Rubens did one, even Matisse did Icarus paintings. It was always a kind of theme of the folly of youth, or the fall of Icarus, it was always called. And it was told as a kind of cautionary tale. You know, don't fly too near the sun, and the sun will melt, and your wax is holding the wings, and you'll fall into the sea. But for me, it became a kind of an image of a child following their dreams. You know, and as a father myself, you always want to make your children wings, you know, despite the dangers. You know, you're not going to lock them away. And so over the years, I've gone back to that image again of a child with wings as somebody following their dreams. And it became kind of really, I suppose, poignant for me during the Syrian refugee crisis, and, you know, looking at all those children. And particularly there was one, and a lot of people remember this little boy called Alan Kurdi, who washed up on the beach in Bodrum when seeking refuge in 2015, and you know, the world stopped. It was on the front page of every newspaper across the world for 2 days, and then life went on, and everybody kind of forgot about him in some ways. But I started to paint, I felt as an artist I had to do something, and I tried to respond, you know. And then it occurred to me sometime later that the Icarus myth had a parallel. You know, here was Daedalus, his father, and Icarus trying to escape, seeking refuge, and Icarus fell and drowned in the Mediterranean Sea. And here I was looking at this father and his child, his dead child. And so I did a whole series of paintings, and I had an exhibition called Boat in 2017 where I showed a lot of that work. And this is one then I subsequently did. This is called Lost Boat. And I used that kind of deep orange colour in response to all the life jackets. Remember all those life jackets that were washed up on the beach, and it was on our tellies every night, and there was boats kind of coming up. And this kind of emerged over the course of lots of paintings, where like I've been painting stripes in my paintings for years and years, and they became like figures, like almost like the soul of a person. And like, I know it looks a little bit like a longboat, but it actually was just, I kind of saw them as little figures. And this was the composition of that was the boy washed on the beach, and this was the Icarus figure. And so I kind of combined the reality of what was going on with this ancient old myth. And I suppose then in, you know, making this exhibition, that kind of a spirit of Icarus, or the mythology of it, became the kind of theme that you know, knits all this together. There's mythology all around us here, from the children of Lyr. And I was really attracted, for instance, the children of Lyr. I did a whole show called Journey to Lyr, whereas I actually got a commission to do a painting, and I'd worked on with the National Folk Theatre in Tralee, National Folk Theatre of Ireland, and they had a big production called Clon Lyr, which I designed in my theatre work. And that drew me then more into the Children of Lyr, which is a story I grew up with. You know, we always had lots of books and stuff, and mythology was always, you know, part of my childhood, I suppose. And that story, again, it kind of there's a moment when those children are transformed into swan, but I always thought that moment when they're still a child and half thing, you know, and it became like a child with wings again. And so this was one of transformation. You can kind of see it's called Swanspell. I ended up doing 40 paintings for that exhibition. And that painting here is another one from that same show. And again, it was like, and here's those stripes I was talking about that became kind of like, almost like a life force. But the other thing about that, and about all my work, I think, is that I want you to kind of see the paint. So like, there's no just trying to disguise those. There's a big alizarin crimson, and there's a kind of cadmium red, and but it's a big paint mark. And like when I was making this, I was conscious of the different types of whites, you know. And as a painter, that's what I get my rocks off, is actually painting, you know. And like genuinely, like when I'm in the middle of it, you know, you'd lose sleep over the right shade of green, for instance. And I think in some ways, you know, being an artist, to be able to justify that as a concern in your life at the same time as being aware, and I think artists have heightened awareness of the stuff that's going on around you. Like, I'm so exercised by the children in Gaza for years and years, and by the Syrian children, and by all that kind of trauma. Like, I did a painting in '86 called April, and it was about a young girl. She was painting a boat, but I was living in America at the time, and there was a huge tension in the air when there was a threat of going to war with Gaddafi, and there was real fear of World War III for a few months in America. And I did this large painting that kind of reflected a young girl, innocent girl, who was painting a boat. And this is from a drawing I came across, you know, way back. Putting that innocent in this world that we're in. But I suppose to go, like, even though whatever those themes might be, like when you look at this, the different whites, even the different blacks, I kind of have a process where I put down a lot of colour and then I cover it up, and then I kind of scrape some away, and that kind of process. And it, in some way, if I was to describe all my work, it's a celebration, I think, of the creative act. It's like the instinct that we all have to make a mark, you know, like
legacy.
Like Tom Sawyer painting the fence, and he eventually persuades everyone wants to have a go. You know, if I'm painting something and it's like big painty thing, people want to have a go. They want to make a mark. You know, from the first caveman, they always made marks. And so, like, I try to, like, this is based on a swan, but it's much more than that. It's a big paint mark. And that for me is a celebration of making stuff, of being the creative, and even celebration of the storytelling that's in these things. And so, for instance, in the painting I started with here, this is a kind of picture of a boat, because I want people to see that as a painting. And so the painting itself becomes the subject matter, and that becomes a celebration of the creative act. And so when I, for instance, went to Turkey and worked with those Syrian children and their mothers, most of the men had died, in Tiafi, set up by Anne O'Rourke. I remember initially saying to Anne, you know, the kids, they can't eat crayons, and they had no food. It was like incredibly poor living conditions they were in. But we went in, I set up a kind of room, and we started drawing and painting, and it was incredible, the kind of joy that it brought. And like, I literally have videos of a young child, didn't know what a marker was, never seen a marker. And all these children, suddenly there was a bit of a joy from making stuff. And even the mothers came in and they were painting. And it kind of reinforced for me the kind of importance of having an access to kind of, you know, our instinct to be creative is really essential part of what makes us human. And that was so reinforced for me when I went and came back. So
incredible, absolutely incredible work. Ben, can you talk us through some of the other paintings for a moment, please? I have to say, this is my favourite, if I'm allowed to have a favourite.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's really beautiful. Would you tell us what inspired you to paint this, Ben?
Yeah, well, this has a tragedy about it, but if I talk around it for a little minute first, because like it's got lovely pinks, it's beautiful orange, and it's got this nice picture boat, and it's got the sail, and I kind of tried to do that in some ways to as I said, I kind of, my instinct is to make paint marks and paint, and I absolutely I love it. You know, I love to paint, and but it's like I have this kind of language, and then I remember saying to somebody, like, we have this language, but what are you going to say? What do you want to say with all this language that you have? And this one, as I said, I was so exercised for years by the children in Gaza, and this is called Gaza Brothers. And I was inspired, I suppose, by there was 2 sets of brothers, two sets of cousins, all called Baker, and they were playing football on Gaza Beach, and an Israeli shell killed one of them, and the other 3 ran, and then a second shell killed the 3 of them. So the 4 boys were killed, and again there was a kind of outcry, you know, for a few weeks, and then that disappeared again. And I suppose like that kind of like a child playing football, like that kind of life, we all can been there, you know, lived that thing, and it's something about it that always seems to me to bring me back to, you know, my own children, or, you know, our children, and it could just in some freak be us, you know. And so I kind of just wanted to celebrate them in a way, you know. I didn't want to make a tragic, you know, painting. So, but there's 4 little figures there, and this is the Icarus figure again, and then the Icarus figure with the boat. So, and that was about that parallel I was talking about before, where Icarus was trying to seek refuge and escape his imprisonment. And so the image of the child with wings became one of hope, one of following their dreams, and so to have their dreams dashed away. But I wanted to mirror the two. And then this boat, these were all like, I know it looks like a bit like a longboat, but they were like the little souls of, it's how I began that the process kind of became going from stripes into, you know, making that image, and that's nearly like a symbol now for me, as of a boat with figures on it.
And it's certainly, albeit a very sad story behind it, it's very beautiful, and the colours are very strong and poignant and bright. Yeah,
and you know, when I was painting this, I had finished a lot of Children of Lear paintings, and they were essentially black and white. There were a lot of black and white, and I as I was saying before, I make paintings, very colourful paintings, and sometimes then I cover that up, so it's a kind of hidden colour. And I'll show you in the Fragments of Hope. That's kind of, you can see that really clearly. It's one of the last paintings I've did. But when I went back to do this exhibition, and I had I kind of chased the colour. I want to kind of celebrate the colour again, and you know, so that's how that came about. I mean, the orange initially came from the jackets that the life jackets that all those little kids were wearing.
So Ben, we might have a look at some of the other beautiful pieces. In total, how many paintings have you on exhibit?
There's 20 paintings here, and they go back, I think, to 2001. I think this one here is 2001. This little one here, and this acrylic is called Wand Flight, and that is based on the Children of Lear story. And in the Children of Lear, when I did the design for the folk theatre, they came out with this. There was an element to the story that I hadn't known, where when she makes the spell, Aoife makes the spell and turns the children into swans, she threw her wand into the air, and the wand was taken by this giant raven called Morrigan. And Morrigan is a lot of Irish mythology, and you find her all over. I have an Inuit myth over here, and I'll tell you about that one. But in this one, Morrigan took the wand and flew away so that the spell couldn't be reversed. So I did a lot of Morrigan paintings. And this one here, the Sedna, so this is 2005. And that actually came about because I had directed a play for the Waterford Youth Arts called Whale. And Whale was a play about, I don't know if you remember all those whales there's 3 whales trapped in the ice under the Arctic, under the ice up there, and the Russians, and this is a true story, the Russians and Americans got together and freed the whales. I think one died. But there was a play written about it, and in that play, the author mixed up this mythology, the Inuit creation mythology of the Princess of the Sea, is a figure called Sedna, who was a young girl. And it's a crazy story, will I tell you?
Yes, we'd love to hear it, Ben.
Well, so it became, she was a beautiful girl on in the Inuit ice, and it came for time for her to be married. And so anyone who wanted to marry her had to come to this big party, and she got to choose. And it came down to these two suitors that she couldn't make up her mind. And so they were having a big dance on the ice, and as they were dancing, this huge raven flew in. And the raven, again, is a mythological character in Inuit mythology. And he flew in and fell in love with Sedna, this giant raven, and swooped down over the ice and scared everybody. And they all tried to run away, but the raven kept coming back and coming back. So the two guys took Sedna in a boat and rowed out to sea to try and escape. But of course, the raven kept following, and in the end, they threw her overboard to try and escape her. Right, but she clung onto the edge of the boat, and so they cut off her little fingers, chopped off all her fingers. The little fingers sank and became all the small fish of the sea, and then the other fingers became the bigger fish, and eventually her thumbs she clung last, and they became the whales. So this was in that whole story, and to this day she then sank, of course, and to this day she is known as the Princess of the Sea. So she is the kind of creator of all the sea life. So it's an Inuit creation myth.
And is this connected to your most recent painting?
It is in a way, in that there's another goddess there, and this again came out of a theatre thing. I had written a shadow play called Fiacra and the Winter Elk, which we did during Winterval, and in that I had used the Ancealach. So it's this little figure here, and she's an ancient Irish goddess of winter, and so she looks after storms and snow and all of that kind of thing. And she transforms, as I found out, I had her transforming in my story into a raven, and is a kind of bizarre kind of little connection. So Ceallaigh is sometimes described as a witch, sometimes as a hag, and sometimes as a hag witch. And I wanted to set my play at Gallstown by the Dolmen. And the Ceallaigh she was with the two of the Donnan, it was way back a kind of pre-pagan mythical Ireland times. And so in my research I ended up trying to find out what the old Irish word for Gallstown, the Dolmen. And that translated into the Hill of the Hag. And I said, okay, there's something about her, the Hill of the Hag, at an old Dolmen thing, it must be the thing, the Ceallaigh. And I found out then that the Irish word for a cormorant is an Ceallaigh dubh. And so I actually heard Blind Boy talking about this recently. In the mythology, she became manifest as a kind of as a cormorant, and then sometimes as this goddess. And so, that's really how that came about. I was working at my studio in Goma, the Gallery of Modern Art in Waterford, and Jenna, that runs it there, she had kind of set us all a task to kind of make work that was much more sustainable. And part of that was we did a series of workshops. I can't remember the artist's name now. We were showing how to make our own ink, using oak gall. So this is actually, so I made this ink. That's all from oak gall, and use a fixative. And so I painted her here, and that was like the painting in the painting again. And then there's a lot of collage under this and paper under this. I even mixed, instead of using the glues and the size, I mixed flour, really old school, more to kind of size it all up. And even the charcoal was made by another artist, James O'Brien gave me that charcoal. He made that charcoal himself, the Born Sticks. So, but again, it was kind of like, if I say, a celebration, if you like, of the storytelling of ancient Ireland as much as anything else,
We're upstairs to see this beautiful piece of art, Fragments of Hope. I absolutely love the name, Ben. What's the inspiration behind this beautiful piece?
Well, you know, in some it's like that. You can see a fragment of the little boat and those little lives I was talking about, those skulls. And that's this painting has gone through lots of transformations. I started this painting over 2 years ago, and actually was still wet when I hung it up here. So I've kind of gone back to it and gone back to it and gone back to it. And as I was saying before, the process I use, I put a lot of colour in and then began to cover up the colour. And I try in some ways, I know there's stories and I have narratives, but I try as much as I can to tell these stories with the paint, where you get a kind of emotional reaction and you get a feel of the paint. And I wanted this to have a kind of sense of hope. And you know, I started doing it when when Assad was overthrown in Syria. That was a part of it. And then in the middle of all this, the tragedy that's continually unfolding in Gaza, that phrase, fragments of hope, works both ways. You know, there is a fragment of hope, but also hope is in fragments. And that, you know, the hope that we had, that something was going on, is being shattered every day. But at the same time, I wanted some kind of spirit of a life about the whole thing. I wanted to have an effervescence or something of the people. And
it just needs now a beautiful home to house this amazing piece. It is absolutely stunning. Thank you, Ben.
Well, thank you.
Ben, please tell us the name of your exhibition and what your inspiration behind it is.
Well, it's called shiúl, leis, Sióga, which is Away with the Fairies, which I find is a good way to live your life. And I suppose these paintings go back over a 20-year period, and all of them have some kind of mythology, some Irish mythologies from all, and so it seemed like an appropriate name for the thing. And it's on here in the Old Market House Art Centre in Dungarvan, and it's running until the 26th of April, every Tuesday to Saturday, so hope you can come along and enjoy it.
It's a beautiful exhibition, and whether you want to buy a piece of art or just enjoy it, Ben would really appreciate you popping along, because it'll be a great day out, and you can always pop over to Mary's for your lunch right afterwards. Thanks for watching.